Of Everyday Alex, and this is going to be a slightly shorter episode than some of the lives. The reason being is it's my wife's birthday today, so I have prior commitments in about 10 minutes time. So I wanted to talk today about why it's important to track progress on the recovery journey. And this came out of a few sessions that I was doing this week, where people have been making some actually really quite good progress, but happened to be on the day that I was speaking to them having a bad day. And on a bad day, it's easy to sort of see the fact that someone still feels crap, there's still symptoms. And one of the things that happens is memory is state dependent. So what that means is when we feel crap, we remember all of the other times that we felt crap. And so it's hard on a bad day to see progress. And it's very easy to go into a mindset of, I'm not getting better, nothing's working, nothing's changing, which then compounds feeling crap. And so the more that one tracks progress, the more that on a bad day you can look back and you can see the progress that's been made over, let's say, the last month or the last few months, the easier it then is to get back into a more steady, positive mindset. And the sort of infamous story at Optima Health Clinic of this, in fact, if you look at the recovery stories on my YouTube channel, you'll see one titled The Story of Our First Employee. This is a guy called Simon. And there's a sort of famous story with Simon that he doesn't mind me telling, that he was, many years ago, he was having sessions with Anna on the psychology side. And he came into the session and Anna said, so how are you doing, Simon? He said, I'm doing terrible. I feel really tired, and I've got kind of bad muscle pain, and they sort of went into kind of what was happening. And Anna, of course, is thinking, oh no, like he was making really good progress, and kind of like what's happened. And then just sort of happens to say, just tell me a bit about what you've been up to over the last few weeks. And Simon then lists the fact that he was working part-time for us, and he's gone from working a couple of half days a week to working something like full-time. He'd climbed Mount Snowdon the previous weekend. I think it's the highest mountain in Wales and maybe the second highest in the UK. He's climbed a mountain, and he's gone over a period of like 2 or 3 months from being very limited to having a lot of energy. He's not 100% yet, and this was before we'd perhaps improved some of our teaching around bouncing the boundaries and pacing and listening to your body and all of that sort of thing. But the point being that if there wasn't tracking of what had been happening, it's easy to go, oh my God, he's doing really badly, but it's context specific. He's doing badly because he's done way too much. When we track progress on the recovery path, and not in a sort of analysis paralysis way where one becomes sort of crippled with like constantly assessing everything that's happening, but when one tracks progress and symptoms and interventions and activity and those sorts of things, it's much easier then to be able to see the trends and to see the overall picture of what's actually happening. And so the things that I recommend people do, and be this on a recovery from chronic illness, be this working on trauma or mental health, whatever it may be, but track the key measures of how you're doing. If it's fatigue, it might be your energy levels. If it's depression, it might be your mood levels. If it's anxiety, it might be your anxiety level. But have a way of rating and tracking how it is that you're doing. And then score each day, like check in on a regular basis, and not each day reviewing and analyzing all the history, but track the progress. You then want to have a basic way of recording things that you're doing. And if it's energy levels, you want to track your activity a certain amount. If you're doing specific interventions, you want to track that. You want to track the day you start a new supplement, or the day you increase the dose of a supplement, or if you start a meditation practice, or you start a particular therapeutic tool. Because then, if you're having a day and you feel really crap, one of the things you can do is you can, rather than on that day, you're going to be the least resourceful in making sense of what's happening. Then the data becomes much more important. You can go back and look at what's been happening over the last few days, the last few weeks, the last few months. And firstly, you might just be reassured because you can see there's progress. You can see that, hang on a second, I rated my anxiety. It was 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10. And then I had like some 4s and some 5s. Like, you can see there's progress. That alone will help calm some things, because you can take the relief that I'm having a shit day. I feel like right now, because memory is state dependent, I can only remember all the times that I felt crap. But actually, the data tells me, because I've been tracking things, the data tells me that actually I have been making progress. And then you, sometimes if you're having a really bad day, you can say, well, hang on, because it's not always as immediate as you do X and then Y happens immediately. It may be you do X and then 3 days later Y happens. So then you can go back and you can see, hang on a second, I went from doing one activity a day to doing 3 a day, 3 days in a row. I did too much. Or it might be that, I was in a kind of consistently in a safe environment. And then I went back and, hang on a second, 3 days ago, I spent time around the very people that was source of a lot of the anxiety that I'm now experiencing. So we can start to see those patterns. We can start to see those trends because we're tracking, because we can see the path and we can see the history of what's been happening. And one of the things that I think is important to remember as well is I'm always, when I'm working with patients, I'm always much more interested in the general trend and the direction than any specific day of how someone is feeling or doing. And not because I'm heartless and I don't care if someone's suffering and having a really bad day. But as a practitioner, you can, a bit like the example I gave with Simon, that you can get sidestepped by going into why is today a bad day, and all the focus of a session goes on to that, as opposed to, hang on, the trend is good. So actually what I want to spend the time in the session is, how do we get that trend more stable and more consistent, for example. So things are rarely as bad as they feel on a bad day. Memory is state dependent. On a bad day, we remember all the other bad days. But things are also rarely as good as they can look on a good day. And the danger is on a good day, because again, memory is state dependent. We remember all the other times that we felt good. We forget that if, for example, we're recovering from fatigue, there may well still be limits to energy. So on a good day, we think, oh, well, it's going to last forever. And we start throwing out the window the very things which are the source of the progress that's been happening. So things are rarely as bad as they look on a bad day. And they're rarely as optimistic as they look on the good day. What we want to do is build a trend in a consistent, positive direction. And tracking progress is part of what helps us do that, because it helps you become objective about, this is the trend that I'm on. In fact, I remember years ago working with the finance director of a major multinational corporation, and my God, did this guy have spreadsheets of every symptom, of every intervention, and arguably perhaps too much detail and sometimes an over-fixation on that versus listening to the body. But it was also really helpful sometimes to be able to say, days he got, I still feel terrible, but wow, I can really see the trend. I can really see the progress of what's been happening. So my invitation to you, my challenge to you is, try, if you're not already doing this, try for a few weeks to track your progress. Try scoring your main few symptoms track your interventions that you're using and when things change, when you start certain things, and track things like activity, like the things which are likely to be important. Track it, have a consistent time of day. Don't overthink it. This is not meant to be a source of anxiety and overwhelm and analysis paralysis. But yeah, it can be really helpful on bad days, but also it can be really helpful on good days to not get carried away and to not do too much. So I hope that was helpful. I don't have time for questions. It's my wife's birthday. I have to go. But comment underneath. I will jump on the comments later. Comment underneath on anything that you've noticed that's been helpful through tracking. Any tools you use to track? I often recommend just someone's notes on their phone, or Google Sheets or Microsoft Excel, some kind of spreadsheet tool. But yeah, share your experiences with tracking symptoms, and particularly how that's helped on bad days to get out of that, but also how it's helped you see trends and see the direction. Tomorrow I'm aiming to do a live episode, and it will be, if I do, it will be earlier. So it'll be 5:30, not 6 o'clock. There'll then be a break for the bank holiday weekend on Friday and Monday. Next Tuesday, we've got the second half of Sally's first in-person session with me in the In Therapy series. If you've not already, do check that series out on my YouTube channel, In Therapy with Alex Howard. And then we'll have another live on Wednesday next week. Thanks for watching, everyone.